अगर माइक पे बोलना है तो माइक पे बोलो, नहीं तो ऐसे भी बोल सकते हो। हाँ ठीक है, और उसका माइक मस्त है।
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you all to this highly awaited event hosted by IIT ISM Dhanbad. I, Bhavik Barua, alongside Anmol Anurag Patnaik, will be your host for today. Before we begin, I request Professor M.K. Singh, sir, Dean Academics and Acting Director, to say a few words. Please, sir.
Good evening to you all. First of all, I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Srikanta Mishra. This is third in lecture in series. This is the Institute lecture series, which is being organized under the aegis of Viksit Bharat, vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Damodar Das Modi ji. And we have subsequently planned many more institute lecture series as well. So, my dear colleagues, students, the members from the press and media, we have assembled over here to listen the honorable guest speaker and our alumnus of this institute as well. We have already gone through one of the technical lecture which was organized by the Department of Petroleum Engineering in the GJLT on the energy transition. And here the noble topic which has been chosen by our guest speaker, that is the Vedic graduation. And you see the Vedic, since from the Vedas, the education system which has been evolved and the education system which we are going through, it's entirely different. And over the period of time, we have lost the principle of Vedas which has been established long back. And it has not been carried forward. And today in the 21st century, though we are in the year of 2023, but the essence of Veda has not been carried forward in a present mode of education system. We are lacking the value system, the morality of the system, the human touch among the system. We are mechanically moving ahead in many directions, but we are losing the core values of the Vedas. And here, to me as a teacher, we love to hear, and I'm sure that many of you have not yet, even exclusively the youngster one, have not sure to go through the Vedas and all. Though the 4 Vedas are there in the scripture, but many of you are not at all aware about that. So we will be inviting our guest lecturer, Dr. Srikanta Mishra ji, who will be elaborating how Vedic graduation is helping us to the core value system, to the modern education system, how we will be coordinating with that. And many of the invention which was made by the people of our country, it has been taken care by the Western. So how this, the coordinations between the core values of Vedas and modern education system will be taking place. Hopefully our guest speaker will be deliberating on that, what I understand from the Vedic graduation and all. And the Gurukulam, which we have heard, not we have seen, but which we have heard, the relationship between the student and teachers is completely missing in the modern education system. The students are facing lots of problem in their own ways. The teachers are facing lots of problem there in the different ways. The coordination between the student-teacher relationship is absolutely missing in the modern education system. So how Vedas and the concept of Vedas is helping us to re-establish the moral values and the core values of the Veda. So thank you very much for the people who are organizing this kind of events. And behind this screen, many of the, our colleagues, many of our officers, the staff members are engaged in organizing such a big events, and over and above the student team is very much responsible to organize any kind of event in this particular institute. So with this, on behalf of the institute, I would like to welcome once again our Dr. Srikanta Mishra sir and entire student fraternity, teaching fraternity, and the officer and the staff to listen the illuminary lecture in this particular evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind words, sir. It is with great pleasure and anticipation that we introduce you all, our guest of honor for today. Dr. Srikanta Mishra is an esteemed alumnus of the 1981 batch of our college. He has obtained his PhD from the renowned Stanford University. Sir recently retired from Battelle, where he served as a technical director for geoenergy modeling and analytics. He is currently working as a professor at Texas A&M, with his research focusing on energy transition and subsurface data analytics.
Not many of us are aware of the timeless Vedic words of wisdom to graduating students found in the Sikshavali of the Traitya Upanishad. The Dikshanta Updesha, or the graduation advice, was traditionally offered by the Acharya, the teacher, to the residents of the Gurukul upon completion of their studies. Dr. Mishra will provide a translation of these mantras along with his interpretation on the modern day relevance of these words.
Dr. Mishra's experience is unquestionable and inspires many of us. So let's listen to the man himself as he is going to tell us about this vital topic.
So before we get started, let's go through some housekeeping details. Please make sure your mobile phones are on silent. And if you have any question during the presentation, please note them down. We are going to have a dedicated Q&A session for that. So without a further ado, let's not keep you all waiting any longer. It's our distinct pleasure to invite Dr. Srikanta Mishra to the stage. Sir, the stage is all yours, and we are eagerly waiting for your insights.
While technology takes its time, let me begin by extending my heartfelt thanks to the organizers for this opportunity. So namaste, salutations to esteemed faculty, and a warm welcome, dear students. Being in the Penman Auditorium brings back such wonderful memories of my stay here from 1976 to 1981. And when I look at the students, of course, you're not even a figment of imagination in your parents' eyes back then. But such is life. So what I wanted to do as part of my visit to my alma mater was, first of all, to share some insights on energy transition and machine learning, but then I thought I'd also take this opportunity to show you the other aspect of my life. So petroleum engineering and Sanskrit coexisting. And so what I'd like to do is, in this talk, basically go back to the Vedic graduation advice, the timeless words that have been handed down by our forefathers. And sometimes these things get lost. There's a very famous movie called Lost in Translation, and that is exactly what is happening here, is because we focus so much on the English meaning of the words, we don't know what the Sanskrit is really telling us in the background. So I'll take a little bit of time and walk you through this process. But before I do that, let's see. Okay, excellent. So what I'd like to do is begin with an invocation. And this comes from the Yajurveda. Mitrasya ma chakshusha sarvani bhutani samikshantam. May all beings look upon me with the eye of a friend. Mitrasyaham chakshusha sarvani bhutani samikshe. May I look on all beings with the eye of a friend. And finally, mitrasya chakshusha vayam samikshyamahe. May we collectively look at each other with the eyes of a friend and coexist in harmony, with collegiality, and with mutual respect. Timeless words passed on for generations by our ancestors. And so I hope that this is a proper introduction to the atmosphere that we have created and we would like to create today. So the outline of the presentation is as follows. I will begin with a short introduction to my Sanskrit journey. And then I will dwell on the topic of today, which is Vedic graduation advice. So there are three parts to it. The first part will talk about where exactly it occurs in the Vedas and why is it given. Then I will tell you the literal meaning, which is what you will find if you do a Google search. And then I will provide my contemporaneous interpretation, because the way the words were delivered back 2000 years ago may not be the exact same situation right now. So the question is, how exactly can we reinterpret that in the context of today? And then I will also chant it in the traditional way. And the reason why I want to do that is I want to show you the oral tradition of Vedic chanting. And there is a certain significance to how things are chanted and why it should be chanted the way it is and so on. And then, because all of us are netizens, I'll give you some resources for how you can follow up on these things, depending upon your interest. So let's talk about my Sanskrit journey and how Sanskrit came to coexist with petroleum engineering in my life. Like many of you, I had Sanskrit in high school, so there was 4 years of training, and then I was blessed to have a very inspiring teacher. His name was Sri Rasbihari Patnaik. So he used to teach us Sanskrit and Odia, and he was just an awesome teacher. And even today, after more than 50 years, I remember the things that he taught us. And in a way, it sort of set the foundation for what came about later. When I went to the US for a few years, of course, there was not much to do with Sanskrit. And then later on, I took conversational Sanskrit classes with an organization called Sanskrita Bharati. And then I also started teaching conversational Sanskrit so that we would be trained as teachers, and then we would become teachers, and then we would train other people to become teachers. And so the process continued. And over the years, I've developed added familiarity from music connections, because my wife is a classical musician. She performs vocal music in the Hindustani tradition, and much of her repertoire is in devotional music. So oftentimes she'll ask me, what is the meaning of this stotra? What is the meaning of this mantra? So it sort of keeps me in practice by basically doing the homework. And then I also do pujas, and I also do weddings, and I call them pujas and weddings with subtitles, because the diaspora needs a continuation of rituals with some translation in English, so that the relevance of what is being done can be communicated and can be instilled in them. And then more recently, as a class for Chinmaya Mission Columbus in Ohio, I've been teaching this Sanskrit through shlokas class. So it all keeps me in the loop and keeps me engaged. And then I also have some general interest in multiple other areas through Sanskrit. And first of all, the thing of much interest is reading and understanding shlokas and mantras in the original. The second one is appreciating the broad spectrum of secular teachings in Hindu scriptures. So even though they occur in Hindu scriptures, the format of these mantras is very secular, and I will show you some examples. And then finally, enjoying the beauty in Sanskrit poetry. I mean, there is just so much to enjoy. Oftentimes, we are unable to comprehend much of that because of a lack of understanding of Sanskrit. So let me talk a little bit about this understanding the mantras in the original part. So let's start with something that should be very familiar to you. Uttishtata Jagrata Prapya Varan Nibodhata. And most of you should also be familiar with the meaning that is officially given by Swami Vivekananda. Arise, awake and stop not till the goal is reached. Comes to us from Kathopanishad. Now, when you actually break it up on a word-by-word basis, there is a deeper meaning that comes to the surface. And in a way, it's captured in the simple sentence by Swamiji. But because this is the Indian School of Minds, IITISM, I thought it would be good to share this with you. So the first word is Uttishtata, means arise. What does that mean? It means focus on acquiring knowledge. That's the purpose of the word Uttishtata. Then comes the word Jagrata, which means awake. But the significance is destroy the sleep of ignorance. So the Uttishtata part and the Jagrata part are bound together because there is a purpose to the awakening, and that is focusing on acquiring knowledge, and then that acquisition of knowledge leads to the destruction of ignorance. Then it says Prapya Varan. Before you get to the Nibodhata part, so let's look at what does Prapya Varan means. Varan means the best teachers. Prapya means having approached. So the education requires you to first identify and to approach and associate yourself with the appropriate teachers. And Nibodhata means learn and understand. So when Swami Vivekananda says, stop not till the goal is reached, the goal is basically what is being expounded here. The goal is to identify and approach and associate yourself with the best teachers, and then learn and understand whatever it is that you're trying to understand. So I hope this adds an additional layer of understanding to the motto of our alma mater. The second part that I said was how do we appreciate secular teachings? And there are many, many secular teachings that you can find throughout our scriptures. And so I will give you this verse from the Rig Veda. Sangachadvam. And typically I chant this as part of my final blessing during weddings. It's a very popular blessing for married couples at the end of the ceremony. So Sangachadvam means as you journey through life together. Sangvadadvam, may you always speak with one voice. Sang vo manamsi janatam, may your minds always work together. Samani vaha akuti, may your intentions be the same. Samana hridayani vaha, may your hearts beat as one. Samanamastu vomano, may your thoughts be in unison. Yathava susa hasati, so that you may prosper together. These words have been used for many different occasions, but you can always sort of tailor it to certain things, and I find it particularly beautiful as you complete the ceremony for a newly married couple, and then you send them off with these, once again, timeless words of blessing and goodwill and wisdom. So now let's get back to the main topic of today, which is Vedic graduation advice. So the first part, as I said, is where it occurs in the Vedas. So it occurs in the Krishna Yajurveda, and within that there is the Taittiriya Upanishad, and within the Taittiriya Upanishad there is Shiksha Valli. Goes back to 6th century BC, according to Wikipedia. Perhaps that date is questionable, but basically it goes back 2,000 years or more. So the way this works is you want to look at what do we find in the Vedas versus what do we find in the Upanishads. The Vedas came before the Upanishads. Primarily, they describe mantras associated with rituals. And the rituals are primarily associated with Havan, Homa, the worship of Agni. Because Agni was the primordial protector in not just the Hindu civilization, but with all ancient civilizations. So when we come to Upanishad, that's when the society has matured, the civilization has become a little bit more stable. And so people started asking questions about what is the meaning of life? Is there a supernatural being? What is the relationship between that supernatural being and however you wish to call that being, whether it's Bhagwan, whether it is God, whether it is somebody else? So what's the relationship between that supernatural being and the individual? So what you have is an exposition of these philosophical things addressed much more in the Upanishads. And then going back to Shiksha Valli, this has 11 anuvakas. And so these anuvakas or lessons provide an overview of what students will learn in the later Upanishads. And it also talks about the ethical and social responsibilities for the student and the teacher. So that is why the Shiksha Valli part is very relevant for students and also to some extent teachers. And so the first part is really a pointer towards other things that will be expounded in other Upanishads. But the last Anuvaka, the 11th one, is the Dikshanta Upadesha. Diksha Anta. Diksha is education, Anta is end. So it's the graduation advice or it's the convocation advice from the teacher to the student. So that's why it's Taittiriya Upanishad, part 1, which is Shiksha Valli, and Anuvaka 11. So now let's talk about why is this advice given. So these days, of course, convocation addresses have become very common. You invite a dignitary, that dignitary shares his or her particular take on what the graduates are expected to do as they step out into the real world. But, there is a certain timelessness in going back to what the Shiksha Valli actually laid out. And so traditionally the same Dikshanta Upadesha was given by all acharyas, by all teachers, to the students of their respective Gurukul, the school, upon completion of their studies. And so having looked at the various mantras, what I have come to is that you can take those instructions and those advice and group them in 4 categories. How to live your post-Gurukul life. And to that end, we have advice about values, about responsibility, about charity, and about respect. So these are the 4 pillars, if you will, of the advice given by the Guru to the students. And I like to think of these as guiding principles or as a code of conduct, which is very similar to 10 commandments. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, etc., etc., what you have in Christianity. So this basically is the Indian equivalent of the 10 commandments. All right, now let's take a look at the literal meaning of the various things. So we begin with Shikshavalli Taittiriya Upanishadi, which means that this is the Shikshavalli that comes from the Taittiriya Upanishad. And it's mentioned as Shasana, which is discipline. So the first line says, Vedam Anuchya Acharyaha Ante Vasinam Anu Shasti. Having taught the Veda, the teacher instructs the pupil. This is the literal meaning that you'll find in most Google search outcomes. So I'm just reporting it, and then we will go on to the contemporaneous meaning that I will provide. Satyam Vada, speak the truth. Dharmam Chara, practice virtue. Swadhyayan ma pramadaha, do not neglect your daily study. Acharyaya priyam dhanam ahritya, offer to the teacher whatever pleases him. Prajatantum ma vyavachetsi, do not cut off the line of progeny. Satyan na pramaditavyam, do not neglect truth. Dharman na pramaditavyam, do not neglect virtue. Kushalan na pramaditavyam, do not neglect welfare. Bhutyai na pramaditavyam, do not neglect prosperity. Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam, do not neglect study or teaching. Deva pitra karyabhyam na pramaditavyam, do not neglect your duty to the gods and the ancestors. Matrudevo bhava. I'm sure that many of you have heard this, but this Shikshavalli Dikshanta Upadesha is where it really occurs. Regard the mother as your God. Pitrudevo bhava. Regard the father as your God. Acharya devo bhava. Regard the teacher as your God. Atithi devo bhava. Regard the guest as your God. The Atithi Devo Bhava part is used a lot compared to the other ones, but this is where you can find them as a collective set of instruction. Yan Yanavadyani Karmani, whatever deeds are blameless, Tani Sevitavyani no Itarani, they are to be practiced, not others. Yan Yasmakang Sucharitani, whatever good practices are amongst us, Tani Tvayopasyani no Itarani, are to be adopted by you, not others. Yeke Jasmachreyang so Brahmanaha, whatever Brahmins they are superior to us, Tesham Tvayasanena Prashvasitavyam, should be honored by you by offering a seat. Shraddhaya Deyam, give with faith. Ashraddhaya Adeyam, give not without faith. Shriya Deyam, give in plenty. Hriya Deyam, give with modesty. Bhiya Deyam, give with awe. Samvida Deyam, give with sympathy. Atha yadite karma vichikitsa va vritta vichikitsa va syat. Then, if there is any doubt regarding any deeds or doubt concerning conduct, Yetra tatra brahmanaha sammarshinaha, as the Brahmins were competent to judge, yukta ayuktaha, adept in duty, not led by others, aluksha dharmakamasyuhu, not harsh, not led by passion, yathate tatra varteran, in the manner they should behave, tatha tatra vartethaha, thus should you behave. Athabhya khyateshu, then as to the persons accused of guilt, ye tatra brahmanaha sammarshinaha, like the Brahmins who are adept at deliberation, yukta ayuktaha, who are competent to judge, not directed by others, aluksha dharma kamasyuhu, not harsh, not moved by passion, tatha te teshu varteran, as they would behave in such cases, tatha teshu vartethaha, thus should you behave. Esha adeshaha, So at the conclusion, the Acharya says that this is the command. Esha Upadeshaha, this is the teaching. Esha Vedopanishad, this is the secret doctrine of the Veda. Etad Anushashanam, this is the instruction. Evam Upasitavyam, thus should one worship. Evam Uchai Tadupasyam, thus indeed should one worship. So now let's break it up into the four pillars, as I mentioned. So the first pillar is values. And so there are three things that occur here. The first is satyam, which means truthfulness. So the lesson is that be truthful in speech and thought. When we say being truthful, the meaning is very clear. Don't resort to falsehood. Do not embrace alternative facts. Stick to the true facts. But you also have to be truthful in thought, in that you should be respectful of other people and do not show certain patterns of behavior that you're not feeling internally. So that's what truthfulness in thought is all about. In action, be truthful to your values. Maintain your integrity. Integrity means what? Integrity means doing the right thing even when nobody is looking. And so all of this collectively, they embrace the value of satyam or truthfulness. And the importance of satyam is there everywhere you look in India, because it says satyameva jayate on the emblem of the country. The next one is dharma. Now, the word dharma is used in various ways, and sometimes we tend to use the word dharma as religion. But in reality, in Sanskrit, dharayati iti dharma. So that which upholds is dharma. So it has been translated as duty. It has also been translated as righteous conduct. So the instruction here is perform your proper duty. And those proper duties change as the status of you changes with life. When you are a student, concentrate on studies. As a householder, take care of your family and your parents and do whatever is needed for the community at large. And then the third component of these triad values is swadhyaya, or self-study. And the lesson here is that learning should be a lifelong process. Just because you stayed for a dozen years in the Gurukul and now you're graduating, you're going out to becoming a householder and practicing whatever profession, doesn't mean that you should stop learning. So the same advice applies here. In fact, what you're doing when you're at an institution is really learning how to learn. And those lessons should continue with you as you go through life. 5-10 years down the road, the technology that you learned in your undergraduate education may have been supplanted with new things. So you always have to keep on updating your skills. And that is what Swadhyaya is essentially telling you. So keep expanding your horizons with new ideas and skills, and do not ever feel that I have completed my education, that means there is nothing more to learn. This is just the starting point of a very long journey. The next pillar is about responsibility. Pay your debts to the teacher. Now, back in the days, the Gurukul used to be free. So somebody would come to the Guru's house, and if the Guru accepted him, then he would stay with the Guru's family, and the Guru would send out all of his pupils at the end of the day to do bhiksha. Bhiksha is what? It's commonly termed as begging, but I think that's a very demeaning term. What bhiksha was, really going out and asking for support from the community for the intellectual activity. Not dissimilar from what faculty members do these days when they write proposals to get grants so that they can support research scholars. Or the government of India provides money for the upkeep of hostels and things like that. The whole point was that the community needs to step up and do its duty so that the tradition of the Guru Shishya would continue. And to that end, it is also incumbent on people who have graduated from the Gurukul and who have gone into a profession, then they would also continue to support the teacher. Look after your own welfare. Take care of your physical and mental well-being. So historically, there was a lot of focus on the physical well-being part, and increasingly we see that mental well-being is also important. And so you have to keep on taking care of your own physical needs and your own mental needs throughout life, and that's your responsibility. Reach out to others, be a productive member of the community and society. No man is an island, as is often said, and no woman is an island by extension of that. So the question is, as you settle down, become a householder, you also have to participate in whatever the society is doing, whatever the community is doing, because the community is made up of individuals. And so the lesson is that you have to be a productive member of the community and society in order to make it a vibrant set of institutions that will continue to sustain everybody who is in that catchment area. And then take pride in your cultural and spiritual tradition. So this is sort of my interpretation of do your duty to gods and ancestors. Because they're really present through the cultural traditions that are passed on from generation to generation, and also the spiritual and the philosophical teachings that are passed on from generation to generation. So be an ambassador for your heritage. And when you go out into the world, whether it is staying in the same state or the neighboring state or in or in some other country, most of the other people may not be aware of what is it that you bring to them. And unless you become an ambassador, nobody else is going to do that for you. The next pillar is charity. Now, traditionally, we think that in Hinduism, not much is said about charity. Actually, there's been quite a lot of instruction about charity, and that's what I'm going to show you. So the first instruction is that give to causes that you believe. And by extension, don't give to causes that you don't believe in just to show people that you're doing a charitable act. Give to those who are less fortunate. Give as much as you can. Give with respect. That's very important because oftentimes you will see people who are doing charitable acts just so that they would get noticed, and there is a lot of fanfare associated with the act of giving. So the instruction is that you should be respectful when you do a charitable act. Give with sympathy. And finally, give with modesty. So these are all very standard things as it would seem like, but oftentimes what happens is that we tend to forget how one should engage in charity. In fact, what is interesting is that the Bhagavad Gita basically repeats many of those messages. And that's one of the interesting things you find about the Gita is that a whole lot of it is not original, but it is a synthesis, a summary of what is in the Upanishads. So in chapter 17, in shlokas 20 through 22, the discussion about the disposition, the gunas, the sattva, rajas, and tamas. And I like to think of these as the vertices of a triangle as in a ternary diagram. And so when you look at the disposition of individuals, you can see where they plot on the sattva axis, where they plot on the rajas axis, where they plot on the tamas axis, and then you can put them in a point. But the interesting thing is that that's not a static representation. It keeps on changing with time. The idea is to move towards 100% sattva because it represents goodness, but clearly that's not possible for normal people. So you have to strike a balance between sattva and rajas, which reflects passion, and tamas, which reflects ignorance. So what does the Gita say about the type of charity that you engage in? And so it distinguishes between sattvic charity versus rajasic charity versus tamasic charity. Sattvic charity is that which is given because it is right, without expecting anything in return, and at the right time and place. Sattvika dhanam yat anupakarine diyate. Anupakari is na upakari, the person that cannot give you anything back. So you're doing something without expecting anything in return. That's the highest form of charity. It's not transactional. When it becomes purely transactional, then it becomes a rajasic act, because you're giving something grudgingly and with the expectation of getting something in return. So that's the very typical description of a rajasic charitable act. And then finally, tamasic charity is where something is given at a wrong place and time to unworthy people without respect and with insult. So very beautifully differentiated, and in a way it's telling us that what we learned in the Upanishads, what I've summarized here, is also the message that you can get if you were to extract it from the Bhagavad Gita. The final point is about respect. Treat your mother, father, teacher, and guest as God, someone who is worthy of supreme respect. Now, this is also tied to the concept of puja. When you do puja, you are actually treating somebody with honor and respect. And the word puja comes from Purnat Jayate iti puja, that which is born out of contentment. Because if you're discontent and then you're trying to treat somebody with honor and respect, clearly there's a disconnect. And so you're expressing something, but you're internally not feeling it. So that's the internal consistency that our scriptures really focus on. And so the emphasis is on doing these things when you're feeling it and not just going through the motions. Show reverence to your superiors and those who are more distinguished. Now, this is a standard refrain across generations. My parents' generation thought that we were disrespectful of them. And we in turn think that, the kids who are going to school right now are disrespectful of us. So this is going to be a standard refrain. And then 20 years down the road, you come back and realize that, hey, maybe I should have been more respectful of my teacher, of my uncle. So the lesson is that, keep this in mind. Show a reverence to your superiors and those who are more distinguished, because life is not a zero-sum game. Just because you acknowledge that somebody is superior, somebody is more distinguished, does not demean you. You remain who you are. But by respecting somebody for his or her accomplishments, you actually are paying respect to them and you're gaining their respect. And then the last part is, if you have any doubts about your actions, your conduct, or your judgment, seek guidance from those who are more learned and experienced than you. There's a very interesting book written by a guy called Tom Nichols. It's called Death of Expertise. And you see this trend growing more and more, that people will do a Google search, they will find some information on a topic in about 30 seconds, and then they go out and pretend to have a meaningful intellectual conversation. And the idea is that, my feelings are about as important as your experience. But there's a very shallowness to these types of discussions. And that can be found out fairly quickly. So once again, life is not a zero-sum game. And when you go out and seek guidance from those who are more learned and experienced than you, you're not putting yourself down. You're adding to your layer of knowledge, of your understanding of life, and by showing them respect, you're also getting their respect back. And here, one of the things that you would see in the words was the word Brahmana. And it's very common to say that a Brahmin is somebody who wears a sacred thread, who has a title like Mishra or Tripathi or Sharma, for example. But you know, the word Brahmana means Brahmam Janati iti Brahmana. The person who is cognizant of Brahman, the divine, the divinity that is inside all of us. And the way I like to translate the word Brahmana is that those were the intellectuals, those were the custodians of knowledge. So when you look at a collection of faculty members here, they are all Brahmanas in the modern day scheme of things, because they are the custodians of knowledge. And so those are the people that should be protected. Those are the people that you should seek guidance from, because they are the ones who put in the time and effort in learning and in acquiring that experience. Okay, so now what I will do is, I will, just for completeness, I will do the chanting. And the beauty of Vedic chanting is well known, and you can feel the healing effects of Vedic chanting in many different ways, that the traditional mantras have really acquired a very significant following in the Western world. And that's because the way the chanting was done was that somehow people figured out that this particular cadence is something that really soothes the mind and soothes the body as well. So you know, doing the chanting with the proper cadence is very important, and it can do wonders to your feeling of peace and sanctity. So when you look at the word mantra has two meanings. The first meaning is manam trayate iti mantra, that which protects the mind. Even if you don't understand what is the meaning of the mantra, just the cadence and the chanda, it soothes you, and that's where it protects the mind. And it helps you focus on whatever activity you're engaged in. The second part is mananam trayate iti mantra. Mananam means reflection. When you're not only listening to the words of the mantra, but you're also thinking about it, you're appreciating it. Just like when you listen to a film song about ishq, you know, you're always thinking about love, and then you can internalize it, and then a smile comes on your face. Similarly, as you understand and appreciate the meaning of the mantras, you know, that becomes a manana activity. So, let me give you my rendering of the Shikshavalli. I'm not a professional chanter, so please bear with me. Shikshavalli Taittiriya Upanishadi Shashana Vedamanuchya Charyo Antevasina Manushasti Satyam Vada Dharmanchara Swadhyayan ma pramadah Acharyaya priyam dhanamahritya prajatantum ma vyavachetsi Satyanna pramaditavyam Dharmanna pramaditavyam Kushalanna pramaditavyam Bhutyena pramaditavyam Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam Devapitrakaryabhyam na pramaditavyam Matrudevo bhava Pitrudevo bhava Acharya devo bhava Atithi devo bhava Yanyanamadhyani karmani Tani sevitavyani noitarani Yanyasmakagam sujaritani Tani tvayopasyani noitarani Ye ke chasmachreyagamso brahmana तेषां त्वयासनेन प्रश्वसितव्यं श्रद्धया देयम् अश्रद्धया देयं श्रिया देयं ह्रिया देयं भिया देयं संविदा देयम् अथ यदि ते कर्म विचिकित्सा वा वृत्तविचिकित्सा वा स्यात् ये तत्र ब्राह्मणा सम्मर्षिणः युक्ता आयुक्ताः अलूक्ष्या धर्मकामाः स्युः यथा ते तत्र वर्तेरन् तथा तत्र वर्तेथाः अथाभ्याख्यातेषु ये तत्र ब्राह्मणा सम्मर्षिणः युक्ता आयुक्ताः अलूक्ष्या धर्मकामाः स्युः यथा ते तेषु वर्तेरन् तथा तेषु वर्तेथाः एष आदेशः एष उपदेशः एषा वेदोपनिषत् एतदनुशासनम् एवमुपासितव्यम् एवमुचैतदुपास्यम्. So, that takes me to the end of my presentation. And I'd like to conclude by doing a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to share some useful resources with you. And all of you, of course, are very net savvy. And so these are all links, and I'll share these slides with you somehow. And so you can get these links. The first link is for an organization called Sanskrita Bharati. And this organization has taken upon itself to promote the learning of Sanskrit through conversation, so that you don't have to go through the formal way of memorizing tables in a very dry and uninspiring way. And so when you go through conversational Sanskrit, it actually makes the learning process a lot easier. In fact, when you go out and learn a new language, so when I was taking conversational Spanish courses, I found out that being exposed to vocabulary in a situational conversation setting was a lot more useful than just going through the book, and the same logic applies in Sanskrit. The second is a site that is called Sanskrit Documents Collection, and it's an unbelievable collection of documents in both Devanagari and English and many other Indian languages, PDF formats. And you can find all kinds of documents, not just philosophical texts, but also common stotras and mantras and things like that. And then finally, the folks at IIT Kanpur have put together this thing called the Gita Super Site. So what they do is that they take each shloka, and they will have like 10 different resources for each shloka, and these are commentaries by the best known people that you can find, beginning with Shankaracharya and Madhavacharya and Swami Sivananda, Swami Chinmayananda, etc., etc. So you can do a lot of self-study using that particular site. Now, the reason why I have included that here is in our lifetime, it's probably not possible to go through all of the principal Upanishads and understand the deep meaning. And in a way, if you want to go to one single source, and then try to get the essence of the Upanishads, and that is Bhagavad Gita. And so within this Gita Super Site, there are multiple resources, so you just have to pick one and then stick to it, and hopefully that'll help you in good stead. So the last thing I'd like to do is to do a final prayer, and this is the three Shantis. Now there is a method to the madness as to why we do the three Shantis. The first Shanti is called the Adhi Daivika Shanti. So it's praying for peace with all the natural forces. During the Vedic times, the natural forces were the ones that were worshipped as gods, because you wanted protection from them, you wanted their benevolence. So that's why it's called the Adhi Daivika Shanti. May we be at peace with all natural forces. The next one is called Adhi Bhautika Shanti. So the word Bhuta doesn't mean ghost in Sanskrit. The word bhoot or bhuta means all the living things. So the Bhautika Shanti means that may we be at peace with all living beings. In a way, going back to the first mantra that I chanted, may we treat everybody with respect and as friends. And so the third Shanti is Adhyatmika Shanti, which is may we be at peace with ourselves. So we end with the three Shanti prayer. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that this was an interesting talk, if nothing else. So have a wonderful day. Yeah, absolutely. How are we doing this?
So,
You can ask questions. I'll just go on and then.
So we have a microphone over there, so they can take.
Okay.
So thank you, Dr. Mishra, for the enlightening presentation. So now we will be moving on to the Q&A session. Everyone feel free to ask your questions, and sir will be happy to share his insights. Please. Anyone who wants to ask question, please raise their hands. We have.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for the enlightening session. I have one personal query. Everyone is talking about we have to be focused. This world is full of distractions, and right now the time demands career focusing, or wherever at every stage of life we need to be focused. So, can you please enlighten us how to be focused in our work, in our life? Thank you, sir.
So in the Bhagavad Gita, there is actually a shloka about how chanchala mana and how the mind is very fickle. And that's because of the attachments that it has with all the worldly things. So the more attachments you have, the more the mind will be disturbed because it's always thinking about connecting between point A and point B. So think of this as a matrix. And in the matrix, if you have lots of rows and lots of columns, the off-diagonal terms are going to be much more in number. So if somehow you can reduce the off-diagonal terms into zeros, then basically you can come up with a more compact representation of that matrix. So linear algebra. So that's basically the concept here, that what you have to do is you have to train yourself to detachment. And detachment does not mean rejection of everything. Detachment means that you have affinity towards worldly goods because you are a person who's living in the world. You have not taken sannyas, but you have to do things in moderation. And what is that level of moderation that only you can figure out? And once you have that figured out for yourself, that is when you find yourself going backwards a little bit and being less and less disturbed. So it's a little bit like when you look at the surface of a body of water. Where do you see the biggest vibrations? You see the biggest vibrations at the surface. And as you go down into the depth of the water-bearing body, you see that the waves have been attenuated. And that's basically the analogy that is given with respect to how do you control the mind.
Next person.
Yes. Sure.
So, as you said that there are some scriptures, like every possible scenario is written down in our scripture and some solutions to those. So, how can one interpret it, and how can one know if he or she is interpreting something from the scripture, if he is going in the right direction?
So this is where the role of the guru is very important, because oftentimes when you get into any subject, any field of study, if you try to do everything on your own, you may not have the appropriate insight which comes from experience. And that is where the role of a guru becomes important. And the role of the guru is to look at your situation and help you navigate through these nuances, because there are many nuances, and sometimes you will read something and then you will say that yes, this feels like it is the solution to my problem, but I'm not sure I know how to apply it to my situation. So that is where initially having a guru to tell you what are the aspects of the scriptures that can help you is very important.
Any other questions?
Hello, sir. Very nice talk. So, I just wanted to know that, have your Sanskrit journey helped with your spiritual growth, or what is your level of impact on your life with this Sanskrit learning and doing all these things? In what way, precisely?
I think I will say that there are two aspects where I have benefited. The first is being exposed to the beauty of Sanskrit is a joy in itself. So anytime you come across something that is not only timeless but it also has profound meaning, it just is profoundly beneficial. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So for example, in the Meghaduta, Kalidasa is describing how the rains come. So he says, Ashadhasya prathama divase megham ashlishta sanum vapra krida parinata gajaha prikshaniyam dadarsha. So as the clouds come and embrace and they touch the peak of the mountain, it's almost like a playful elephant wrapping its trunk around an object. So just, at least to me, it was very beautifully done. The other one is in the movie Oppenheimer. So the story goes that when Oppenheimer saw the first blast of the atomic bomb, he quoted the Bhagavad Gita, and his words were Divi Surya Sahasrasya Yugapat Uttita Bhavet. So if 1,000 suns were to shine suddenly, then that would be similar to what I'm witnessing right now. And he had when he was studying at University of California at Berkeley, he had a professor of Sanskrit, Arthur Ryder, who has done many translations of Sanskrit texts. And so he took the Sanskrit classes and then he had this sort of memorized. And so the first thing that came from his mouth was this. And then there is another one where he says, Kalosmi, meaning I am death. But that's may not be the full appropriate translation, but that's the one that he said when he realized that what he had created is going to be the cost of death of many people. So to can come back to your question. So to me, the beauty of Sanskrit is something that I find very enjoyable. The second thing is on the spiritual front. What I'm trying to do is practice a little bit of this detachment. It's not always very easy, and detachment also comes when you try not to be emotionally involved with everything that happens. Somebody tells me something, I need to respond back very quickly instead of taking a deep breath and quietening the mind. So that reduction in the mental fluctuation, that attenuation of mental feelings, I think is one collateral benefit that I have been enjoying.
Namaskar, sir. Sorry, my health is not good, sir. My voice. Hello, sir. Sir, my question is that you told about we should train our mind and body. So, sir, I always get confused how much to train our mind and how long should we train our body. And I find it easy to train the body, but during training of mind, my mind always tricks me. So, according to the scriptures, sir, how we should practice this and how we can make ourselves more disciplined, sir.
Now I think we're veering into disciplines that are sort of beyond my area of expertise. But once again, fairly low-level answer that I can give you is it's all about discipline. And discipline means learning to control your urges. So when you try to exercise your body using the principles of yoga, what we lose sight of the fact that the word yoga has some very interesting meanings. The word yoga comes from the root yuj, which means to join. So it's joining the individual with the divinity, and so all of the practices that go with the word yoga are towards that end, that you want to quieten your mind, that you want to focus inwards, not outwards. And by focusing inwards, you can appreciate the oneness of the universe. So all of the principles of yoga are towards that end. Is how do you control your passion? How do you control your urges? How do you do things without expecting anything in return? How to not treat everything as transactional? So, in a way, I think the list of do's and don'ts that was specified in the Vedic graduation advice are all small steps that you can take towards this journey along the path that gets you to a quiet state of mind and a more peaceful and balanced equilibrium.
Thank you, sir, for this very informative session. I have two questions. Though there are several things I can have questions on. The first question is that how far these things are practicable in professional life. I just give you an example. For example, you said we should follow the Satyam. And very oftenly we hear that Satyam Briyat, Priyam Briyat, Ma Briyata Priya Satyam. And in the professional life, if you always speak truth, you are always gone case. Okay, your life is hell. Then second question is, do you know the source of sloka? Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Sri Guru Namaha. I am asking this because I find that many of the modern day gurus have exploited this sloka. And what is happening, they have kept the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh on the back seat and put forward themselves on the front chair. If you go to their ashrams, what you will find that they are sitting on a chair, on the side chair, you will see their photos, garlanded photos. So that means first you have to go to him, and there is no place for Brahma, either Brahma, Vishnu or Mahesh. I just wanted to know where from this started. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara. Is it really part of our Vedic scriptures or Upanishads or Puranas, etc.? Or somebody started and we followed it in words, just like. Thank you.
Excellent questions. So let's take the first one, which is Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat, Ma Bruyat, Satyam Apriyam. So when you speak, speak the truth, but speak the pleasant truth, not the unpleasant truth. That is actually not in contradiction to what I was saying about Satyam as values, because that is internalizing it, whereas what you are referring to is how do you externalize it. So when you maintain relationship with others, it might be politically correct, it might be prudent to speak only the pleasant truth. You might have internalized a different truth for yourself, but for maintaining civil relationships, you may have to make this adjustment. So it's a little bit of a compromise, but as long as it doesn't affect what you do on a day-to-day basis, that's fine. At least that's my position. The second question was about the definition of the Guru. And to me, it's very similar to the definition of a Brahmana. If you go by the definition which is standard, anybody who does the Upanayanam and wears a sacred thread is a Brahmin. Anybody who's born to a Brahmin family is a Brahmin. But my interpretation is really, first of all, the aspirational goal is Brahmam Janati iti Brahmana. So at the end of the day, that person should be a realized person. So to be truly called a Brahmana. Otherwise, the broader definition is somebody who's a custodian of knowledge. Similarly, if you look at the next couple of shlokas in Guru Stotram, it says, Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Melitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So what is important is that the Guru is the one who does the opening of the eyes. And he does that by giving you the ointment, the shalaka of Jnana Anjana, the ointment of Jnana that opens the eyes. So that is really the true definition of a proper Guru, who is opening your eyes to new areas of knowledge, to self-awareness, and towards a fulfilling professional life. So if those attributes are satisfied, those are the first set of conditions, then you can say that you can respect the Guru at the ultimate step, like Brahma, like Vishnu or Maheshwara, which obviously is at odds with how the gurus of modern day tend to project themselves. So once again, there's that disconnect, and if you accept that, then obviously you will say that that person is not a true guru as far as I'm concerned, and just leave it at that.
नमस्ते सर। विद्या ददाति विनयम, विनया दाति पात्रताम, पात्रता धर्मापनोति, धनात् धर्म ततः सुखम. Means ultimately we are getting sukh from vidya, but most of the IIT are facing several suicidal cases. So something wrong with the system, na? So Sanskrit is one of the best language, and Sanskrit Bharati is also giving a help to learn Sanskrit. And Manwar Srisdev Pujari ji also asked to give teachers for IITs for Sanskrit. So kindly enlighten, can we get teachers from Sanskrit Bharati or any other organization to learn Sanskrit physically? Sir, please.
Yeah, there are many ways of doing that, and so one possibility might be to maybe introduce an elective on ethics, and ethics, whether it comes from Chanakya Niti, whether it comes from the Gita, whether it comes from Subhashitam, can be put together by organizations like Sanskrit Bharati. And that can be, I think, a very interesting elective. In fact, in the US educational system, universities are much more comprehensive than IITs here. And so they have access to courses in the humanities department where people talk about philosophy and comparative religion. So that could be, added to what is offered right now. Okay, I think we are at about the end of everybody's patience. I would like to thank you all for being here and sticking it out till the very end. Take it away, guys. Thanks.
With this, we have come to an end of our session. Sir, the presentation was quite fascinating and very informative. And it goes without saying that we all had a great time listening to you. And we were all enlightened by the session. Thank you so much, sir, for taking valuable time out of your busy schedule and spending your valuable time with us. And on one more thing, our officiating director, Professor J.K. Patnaik, sir, couldn't be here with us today, but he sends his warm regards to you for this enlightening session. Thank you so much, sir.
Now I would like to invite Professor M.K. Singh sir to felicitate Dr. Srikanta Mishra. Thank you so much, sir. And of course, a special vote of thanks to our audience who were able to join us today. We hope the knowledge and insights shared with us today may contribute to you for a more sustainable and a resilient future. This event is a testament to commitment of the IIT ISM Dhanbad to provide opportunities for growth and learning. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.
बताया ना